All right, good afternoon and welcome. It's really nice that we can meet in person. It's been over 2 years since we've had this meeting in person. So I'm really grateful that we could meet here in person and see each other rather than over Zoom. Um, Today is Tuesday, April 26, 2022, and we're convened as the Provo City Council and the Provo School Board in a joint meeting. The time is 12:05 p.m. We're meeting at the Provo City School District office at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. And we will begin with a roll call. So I'm going to start down here with Derek.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Nate Bryson, School Board Member.
Terry McKay, Board Member.
McKay Jensen, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member. Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
Melanie Hall, Board President.
Travis Hoven, Provo City Council Chair.
George Hanley, Council Vice Chair.
Rachel Whipple, Provo City Council.
Bill Fillmore, hanger on.
Catrice McKay, Provo City Council.
Wayne Parker, City's Chief Administrative Officer.
John Magnus, Provo City Council Policy Analyst.
All right. And we will excuse the Superintendent, Keith Rattel, today. He's at another meeting, and also Shannon Ellsworth, who was not able to be with us this afternoon. But again, thank you for being here and welcome. First, we're going to start with the discussion regarding the Provo City School District construction. So I'm going to turn the time over to our business administrator who's over construction.
So I actually, we brought Mark Wheeler in today. He's going to, I'm going to turn the time over to him, but he's going to have more detailed information on the timeline of things, what's happened. But so Mark, will you please take over?
Sure. Hi everybody, good to see you.
He's got a microphone for you.
Can I use this?
No, right behind you.
Hi everybody, can you hear me okay? So just a quick update. Let me know if you have any questions as I update you on these projects. Starting with Timpview High School, we'll have some completion dates in 2 steps. The first completion milestone will be next summer, summer of 23. We will move the academic wing, students, faculty into the new academic wing, which is on the north side of the site. So that's step number 1, summer of 23. At that point, we'll move towards the west and south side of the site, start to demolish the old academic wings, create new parking lots on that west side along Timpview Drive, add a softball field, make some other adjustments throughout those areas. That will take us from about August of 23 through late spring of 24. So by the time we're done with the entire project, we'll be right summer of 24 for the Timpview project. One thing to be aware of, everybody will be thrilled to be in that new academic wing until they find out we're losing parking along the west side for demolition and other things along Timpview Drive. So parking from summer, August of 23 through that late spring of 24, basically that school year, will be really difficult. We'll be using public streets more than you see now to make it through that last step of the Timpview project. Any questions on Timpview?
Yes.
Yes.
How much money in the end will we have lost by not approving the first bond?
That's a good question. On Dixon? Yeah, so the 2019 proposal was to redesign the entire campus for $145 million. Right now, for just this phase, which will leave performing arts wing untouched, cafeteria untouched, industrial art wings untouched, and some other areas, we're about $92 million, and fighting escalation week by week. What you're seeing with high schools around the state, new high school campuses, you're reaching, Tooele just had a high school bid at about $391 a square foot. To give you a comparison, when we finished Provo High School, summer of 2018, we were just under $210 a square foot. That's how much it's climbed in that short amount of time.
What are your projections for the rest of the project beyond the first stage?
Beyond this stage? I'm completely guessing right now. I'm just a guesstimate. My guess is it could easily reach another 50 million. Uh,
50.
so 92 million plus about 50-ish. And that doesn't include the escalation because we just can't keep up with how it's climbing.
Those numbers are comparable then.
It's
92 plus 50 versus 145.
and again, please know I'm guessing on this because we have not estimated the next phase. I'm trying to estimate quickly performing arts and some other areas. When I say 50 million, I'm talking construction costs only, no soft costs, right? And so you'll be able to add another 10 to 15 million in soft costs, and most likely, if escalation stays the way it's going, you could easily add another 20% annually by the time we get to that point, and we don't have that timeline yet.
Okay, I'll do the math. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
So you say parking is going to be worse 23 to 24 than it is currently.
Correct.
Has there been any work with that church, again with the church of the LDS church, to get parking back in there?
We have not revisited that officially, although there are still some students parking in there daily. Not anywhere near the capacity. There's probably 30 to 40 vehicles in there every day right now. But we have not reached out to the church real estate department again.
And just to make a comment, they weren't really using that church parking lot to begin with, so it will pretty much return to what it was this fall, before we made some temporary parking in our on our building.
But you're going to lose that temporary parking that final year.
Yeah.
Right? And so there will be no parking finished between that last year.
There will not. Not until late spring of 24.
Has there been any program to try to encourage people not to be bringing cars? Have you seen any improvement in terms of getting to school by bus, by commuting, by biking and walking?
I know the school administration, through student government and other avenues, have talked consistently, whether it's biking, walking, whatever can be done, carpooling. I don't know how successful it's been. We've added a lot of bike racks as well about a year ago to try to accommodate any additional needs, but we still see a significant amount of empty bike racks daily.
I often feel like that Monty Python skit where when I was a child, we walked to school uphill both ways in the snow. Anyway, yeah. I feel like there's just not the cultural change we need.
Have we seen any increase in bus ridership to the school?
You know what? I would need to ask transportation on that, Nate. Sorry, I don't have that answer. We can get that answer for you though. I think right now we have 13 buses, if I remember correctly, and I'll find out that detail for you.
Well, it's really a question for Derek. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And remember when the administration surveyed the students on who was bringing their cars, most of them were inside that 2-mile radius. Like the majority of students who were bringing their cars were not eligible, were inside the 2-mile radius. So the closer they were, there's another reason besides just this is the way you get to school, bringing the car to school. So.
All I know is that it's encouraged my son to ride his bike because it's easier.
So we've appreciated some of the enforcement. You know, we put up no parking to help our neighbors, especially along
Quail.
you know, the north side
Quail.
on Quail, and the enforcement, and certainly we've had, you know, students go, oh, I can't find a place to park, and that has helped some to go, oh, well, it's just as easy for me to park at my house and walk as it was to park at the church. That's why the church didn't get used, because the people who were parking at the church were the same distance from their house almost sometimes. So.
Correct. We even threw some ideas around at one time about shuttles and having some pickup locations, and we were told through communications through administration, through student government and other means, that they didn't think that those would be used. Yes.
An interesting thing I learned about the parkings, Long Quail, they stopped it, but we're doing tickets for it. But the students just come with their parents and say that wasn't the student driving it, it wasn't, and then we can't fight that, and so it's wasted energy and resources, and
Yeah, lots of kids are, they're not using their car, they're using their parents.
they say that they weren't driving when we all know they were.
Yeah. Yes.
So I have a student that's a freshman at Timpview. It's more than 4 miles away from my house, up a crazy hill. And if he misses the bus, he doesn't really have a way to get to school very well because it's about half an hour to ride his bike up there. And we'll be talking about safe routes, but there's not really a great safe route the entire way from our house up to the school. This actually happened last weekend when we were at the conference, because even though I called on the phone and he set his alarms, he did not wake up. So he completely slept through the alarm. But with the collection area for the school being so big, it seems like a lot of students don't have a lot of options. I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed that so many within the 2-mile radius drive too. But I think we need to work on making it more accessible for kids to get there. Like, he can't stay after and do different things unless he's going to walk home or walk to my office, which is relatively close. It's a real problem for a school that big.
Is there an option to extend UVX all the way to Riverwoods? Because that might be helpful.
I think if they did that, it'd have to be a spur line because it turns, right, on University. I don't know what UTA's plans are, but I want to see that system expanded a ton.
Because the kids could just walk up the hill. If there's a stop right there on University, they could just walk up the hill to Timpview.
Derek, do you know, is there a late bus at Timpview?
I was actually just thinking of, I texted Mark, sorry, was asking some questions about, do we have a second chance bus, and has ridership increased, so.
Yeah, great.
Now, they are making Foothill like bike compatible, right? Isn't that something that they're doing? I mean, that would be you guys, but I've seen those notices where you can't park on Foothill anymore because they're all just gonna change.
Yeah, I
Or
think.
Canyon Road, I think it's Canyon Road that is changing.
Yeah, they've been working on doing Canyon Road to put in bike lanes. There was some pushback from the neighborhood that they really wanted to be able to keep parking in the wide shoulder there. I'm not sure where that ended up.
Parking will still be allowed.
Well, that's not safe then, is it?
All right, well, we can continue more of that with the safe routes part, but do you want to continue with more of the construction?
Sure. Any other questions on Timpview? Okay. Going to Wasatch Elementary. If you've been past our Locust Lane and 820 North site recently, you can see there's construction fencing up now. We've been coordinating with the city engineering department. They've been exporting some soils to help them with one of their projects. They've removed a little over 5,000 tons at this point already. You'll see that slowly pick up momentum throughout the summer. And right now, our finish timeline is spring of '24. So from about May 1st through June, we'll be moving into the new building, and that school will be in full operation by August of '24. Yeah. We appreciate the city's help and coordination with that. Yes?
A related question, and maybe McKay and I can talk more at length because I know we're going to be meeting with neighborhood chair, but maybe for the sake of the public, if there's a quick sketch on plans about traffic and parking in that area, since it hasn't had a school before. Are there issues that we need to be thinking about from the city's point of view to?
So we completed a traffic study several months ago, and city engineering has that traffic study.
Okay.
And we have not revisited it recently because we've been focused on the export and other things. but they have that data and.
Yeah, and we've engaged the neighbors directly, and there is, we have finalized the building placement. And so the curb cuts will be on Locust. So they'll not be on Oak Cliff or 820 North. There'll be two on Locust with queuing. I mean, I think that our architects and engineering have made actually great use of the slope, because when you think of a natural switchback, well, this is queuing that will be off the street for parents dropping off, and so and that parking. And so I think that everyone we've shown that to so far has been, oh, great. Especially the people that were worried that the school would add an entrance off Old Willow Lane. There in front of JB Haas's house. But we're not. That's just not a safe place, because we're not even encouraging pedestrian traffic, because if there's pedestrian traffic, then it will become a default drop off, and we can't have kids walking and people backing out of a short block. And so I think that it has been thoughtful, and so we're really excited to show some of, to get that broader out there, because everybody that we've showed that lives adjacent to the property has been really
Likes it. Is there, this might come up with the safe routes, but and I see one of our fine city engineers just showed up. The pedestrian access to that school from kids who live above is really bad, because it's so steep and there's no sidewalk, and so we're going to have to figure that out from the city.
So there'll be, as part of our project, we'll create a sidewalk, city sidewalk along that upper east side along Oakmont. And there'll be two locations where kids will be able to come off that city sidewalk onto our campus. It'll be closer to the southeast side of campus, because that north is just too steep. But there will be a sidewalk with a railing to help get them across the street along Oakmont.
So we will be looking for a little help with that final block, sort of from 1450 East to Oak Cliff, where it comes down the hill. And we'll want to work that out just a little bit, but I think again we're pretty optimistic.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on Wasatch? Okay. And then with our Dixon Middle School rebuild, which you've seen, the new name is Shoreline Middle School. We received bids this past week from the subcontractors and suppliers. You'll see stuff to start to happen on that site as well, on 890 South and 1100 West. We work closely with city engineering on what's going to happen along 890 South as that new road is developed. And that project is estimated to be done summer of '24 as well. So you'll see a lot of work happening in that area really soon. Any questions on that project? And then Bill, to go back to your earlier question, I just did some quick math in my head. If my math is correct, if we were 145 to redesign the entire Timpview campus in 2019, by the time we do a second phase and project out a bit, we'll pay about $30 million more to do it the way we did it. At least $30 million. Yeah. This escalation continues to be something that we've never seen in this Utah construction market. And it.
Same thing hitting you with Wasatch.
Correct. Yeah. Same process. Yes.
Mark, could you just clarify for all of us really quick, when we're done with our current project at Timpview, what percentage of the school will be rebuilt and what percentage is left? Is it a 50-50 or is it more like a 60-40?
I don't know the percentage, Rebecca. I could get that for you. To tell you by wing, the performing arts wing will remain as is. The cafeteria area will remain as is. The front office and counseling will remain as is. And the 3-story industrial arts wing will remain as is. And so those are three significant chunks of the campus.
Shops in the back, right?
Yeah, and they're part of that. They're part of that industrial arts wing. Yeah.
And the weight room stays.
The weight room
And
stays.
Thunderdome.
Correct. Yeah. So there's three significant sections still that'll be part of that next step. Yes.
When Timpview's totally done, what will not be brand new?
With this phase,
With the whole thing.
when everything is done and whenever that's selected to do a future phase, everything will be redone at that point.
Except for the Thunderdome.
Oh, yeah, sorry, except the Thunderdome. Yeah, the Thunderdome was built in '99, so that'll stay as is.
Okay, but at the end in spring of '24, everything else will be done.
No, so spring of '24, you'll still have that existing performing arts wing. You'll still have existing offices, counseling, cafeteria, and industrial arts wing.
Wow.
So this first phase was in coordination with the state risk department, and it addressed 90% of what we're addressing here had to do with building settlement and those issues.
I have a quick question. So at what point will the closed off atrium get taken care of?
The what, sorry?
The little atrium space that's already happening, so that's in this phase now.
Yeah, so that'll be, once we get done with this new academic wing and come around the west side, that'll be some of the demolition area that will work into the library and that north gym in that area.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions about any other projects?
So the final completion date for Timpview is what?
The final what?
For everything?
We don't know because we don't have a second phase yet. So we're just talking phase 2. Phase 1 will be August of 2024.
Do you have a suggestion when we should ask for the rest of the money?
We haven't honestly even discussed when or if or any of that second half of Timpview.
We know it's there, and maybe, we'll talk about how we can, we'll talk about that, I think, when I find an opening in this meeting.
I've shared this with our school board, and I know you all know this. You're seeing it here in Provo, but the growth here in Utah is pushing everything. And this fall, you're going to see 2 districts in the state of Utah, only 2, Alpine and Davis District. Just those 2 districts alone will be requesting almost $1 billion of construction, just out of Davis and Alpine. And so that causes us other challenges as well as how do we maneuver and time our bids so that we aren't competing against those larger districts.
Mark, will you just explain to them also that the state is looking at any unreinforced concrete schools, like that where we're at compared to where the other school districts are at?
Yes, thank you. So the state just released an extensive study this past February. They requested data and did assessments in every school district in the state. And they've got a list that they've published, every district and every building within that district that does not meet current seismic codes. Over the last 10 years here in Provo, we've improved significantly. Once we finish rebuild Wasatch and the new Shoreline Middle School, we will be down to a couple of campuses that don't have students, that will not be up to structural codes. One is the district building here, and one are the Grandview buildings. But after that point, all other schools will be current. There are some districts in the state that have some significant challenges ahead. Granite District, for one. It's going to take them a lot of money and a lot of time to catch up.
That list is more than 20 months old, but there was extensive lobbying on when it would be released, who would know, how would they do this, because they just felt, a lot of districts and a lot of places just felt unprepared to go, to sort of actively address, like we have in Provo, that we had unsafe buildings. That's one thing that we've been, not that we had unsafe buildings for so long, but I'm proud of our community, our district, that we were willing to address it and move forward.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Next, we're going to have a discussion regarding safe routes to schools. One of the schools that was specifically asked about too was Sunset View. So do we want to start with that school and then we can go forward from that?
Rob probably knows.
Rob, do you want to come to a microphone up front? Yeah, and Sergeant Orgill is here too.
I thought Sergeant Orgill was taking care of this one. So Sunset View, is it the 600 South sidewalk? So we have a UDOT.
The south side.
The south side, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a $200,000 UDOT grant that, in terms of the entire stretch that we'd like to do, all the way from 1100 West to 1600 West, is probably we need to rebuild, or not rebuild. We need to build the south side of the street. So it's going to take curb gutter, sidewalk, planter strip to build it out correctly. And that's probably about a fifth. And what it is what they gave that for was specifically for us to be able to use with the larger project to build just the sidewalk. And so that's the money that we have allocated right now. I believe that is for fiscal year 2025. And so we need to put together the rest of the budget, including there are some stretches of 600 South where we currently have right of way. There are other stretches where we would need to purchase typically just a few feet, few extra feet from some of those property owners along 600 South to get the full street in there. So we're working towards it. But right now, in terms of a planned, is probably the 25-26 time frame.
Do you know if so that corner lot across the street from Sunset View is for sale, and one of the lots have been sold? Do you know if the rest of them, is it still for sale or has it been bought yet? Because that might help with the cost, because then the owners will be required to put in the sidewalk.
So I don't know. I don't know about the sales. We've been in talks with developers who have come in for stuff that's on the two parcels that are on 1600 West. My understanding is that the one on the corner has been bought for a single family home. But yeah, development is required to put in the curb gutter and sidewalk at the time of development. So we'd have it right there at the corner, but and there is short stretches with the Kelshall Lane development, which really just has a street tying into about the middle of the block. Did the curb gutter and sidewalk around those curb returns. There's a home further east from there that has existing curb gutter and sidewalk. So we have little stretches that have it done, but as far as I am currently aware, we don't have large development that's looking to redo that block. So it would be to get it in a sooner time frame. We'd have to we'd have to come up with our own budget to put that together, to put together with that grant money.
Yeah, is there do you know, I don't know, maybe Bill knows, if 890 South is going to be completed, if there's going to be safe route between Shoreline and Sunset View? Because right now 890 South has a 20-foot difference between the east side and the west side.
Yeah, so
or more
I don't know
than
if
20 feet.
maybe Mark already took off, but they're working through the grading right now. We've looked at preliminary plans. We have gotten them information for people who are looking at doing further development within the block, and so the exact plans I think may change, but they're working through how to tie those together. There will not be it doesn't meet current standards.
Yeah, there's no way construction trucks are even going to be getting on the road until that road is even viable, because right now it's a one-way street.
Yeah, so the school district has worked towards the curb gutter, and well, all the way up to the north curb line at least will be on the school district property. That's what Mark has been working towards. Like I said, they've been figuring out the grading plan, and so it will tie in at a much more decent vertical curve than is there currently. But yeah, there will be, so that will be completed with the Shoreline Middle School 890 all the way from 1400, or just I guess just east of 1400 West where it ends right now will be completed all the way to 1100 West, and we will be working on safe route to school connections, crossings along those streets, yes.
I was going to say, do you want to ask your question again?
Yeah, so we have, it sounds like 3 or 4 years before we're going to be able to get a sidewalk in.
We don't have, what I will say is we don't have a current budget to do it sooner than that. So.
Okay, so do we have an interim plan to make it safer for kids to walk along that way?
So what we do have is there is a crossing with a reduced speed zone at 1100 West. That's the one that my kids go through to get to school. That gets them to the north side walking down. And if we can't put in something sidewalk on the south side of 600 South sooner, we're likely going to need a similar type of crossing in the interim to get kids in the Kelshaw Lane development. They may have changed the name of that. I can't remember. That was what it was when it was being submitted as plans. But anyways, there at 1400 West, we'll probably need a similar crossing to the north side of 600 South until we can get crosswalk all the way down to the existing four-way stop.
Yeah. What's something?
But it's hard to find a crossing guard.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's awful. It's awful. I'm just wondering if there are cheaper things than putting in a sidewalk. Like if you disallowed parking, okay, I know that's unpopular, but if you don't allow parking and you paint it in a bike lane, then on the property side of that bike lane would de facto be a slightly safer place for kids to walk, wouldn't it?
It's just dirt most of the time.
Yeah, it's dirt.
And there's not currently, so there are bike lanes on the south side of 600 South currently, because they meet up to bare gravel. They don't have curb gutter and sidewalk. There is gravel that's kicked into the road, as always happens there. But there is a bike lane there now. So there is a place, and there's room for kids to be able to walk. It's not, so we're looking to create a better solution than that. But there is space for kids to walk along the dirt right now.
So Rachel brought up a question about safety from coming from the south end of town to Timpview. That there's not really a good way to do that. Is there any way we can start looking at something like that to improve if they miss the bus, being able to walk or ride UVX or bike lanes to get to?
So there's bike lanes. There's currently bike lanes along most of Timpview Drive. We are going to be repaving the south half, basically, of Timpview Drive this summer. We will be adding in the missing stretch of bike lanes down to 2230 north. The current stretch that is missing, and we're actually we don't have it in our. We had a request from one of the planning commission members, Brian Henry, working with Bike Walk Provo, to approached us to do some testing of different types of facilities. We've also tested elsewhere, done temporary, tactical urbanism projects, and we're working with them to get those up in approximately 2 weeks. A temporary roundabout, looking at parking protected bike lanes along a portion of Timpview Drive, looking at planter protected bike lanes along a portion of Timpview Drive. Similar to what we've done in the past, there will be a place for people to get online and be able to give us feedback on each of those types of facilities. We're testing them on Timpview Drive. They can be used elsewhere in the city, but we do have bike lanes on Timpview Drive, and like I said, plan to extend those all the way to the south end there, as well as test these out that to see feedback. I guess to continue to get feedback from Provo citizens, what types of facilities. I guess what their feedback on the different types of facilities that we may be able to put in. But it's at that point it's then again figuring out the budget to do some of these things. Yeah.
It seems silly to think of taking parking off Timpview Drive at the, just because of the school issue. I mean, if, since till 24, they're not gonna have any parking lots. It seems like bad timing to even, like, it wouldn't even work at this point, because we have no parking.
Yeah, so we're not taking off parking there. So again, there is enough room. Timpview Drive is a low enough volume to where it's a 2-lane, traveled way, and that leaves us enough room to have bike lanes and parking. So we're leaving that in place, and I'm trying to remember what the north end. I want to say 29. I can't remember 2980, 2930, something like that is I think where we're paving up through from the south end up through there. And so even our pavement preservation project that we're doing this summer doesn't get up into where the parking for the high school is. And that was on purpose. That was so that we were not trying to do something in the middle of where everybody's parking on the street.
So already chaos.
Yeah.
Gina?
This is really, if we need to do this a different time, just shut me down. But so I live in the Timpanogos-Dixon area, and this is not a question for you guys. I think this is a question for you guys. I don't spend much time on the east side of town, but I know on the west side and in my area, the sidewalks are crumbling. Like we just adopted a baby, so I'm back into a stroller, and I have to go out into the street to get the stroller over the crumbling sidewalks, which, I mean, like, if you're walking, it's fine. Anyway, so my question is, why do we have so many crumbling sidewalks? How do we prioritize getting those fixed? My neighborhood, anyway, is a high walking area. We have people who don't have cars. We have people in wheelchairs, which I'm sure is other areas as well. We have people with limited transportation options. And so my question is, I don't understand the process, so I'd love to understand why we have crumbling sidewalks, why we don't have a budget for it, and why this is not a priority, or if it is a priority, why are we having this problem? And is this a problem throughout the whole city, or is it just in my neighborhood?
It's everywhere.
Okay.
And in Franklin too.
Yep. Also Mazer, where I live.
It's in North Timpview. I think Wayne could answer this question.
Well, between Rob and I, we can probably tackle this. So we are currently, and have been for the last several years, putting $500,000 a year into sidewalk replacement. As you can imagine, that doesn't go very far. We've tried to do that geographically and kind of in quadrants of the city because it's a lot more cost effective to have a contractor in a smaller area as opposed to 3 sidewalks in every neighborhood in the city. And so we do tend to rotate around among those, and I'm not sure when Dixon, North Park area is in the priority list. It is simply a question of funding, and it's prioritization, and we're going through our budget process right now. We'll be presenting the budget, the mayor's recommended budget to the council in 2 weeks, so it's a very good time to have a conversation about those priorities. Now, I can say 5 years ago we were putting $100,000 a year into sidewalks, so we've quadrupled, 5 times that in recent years. We could easily spend 3 times that amount every year and still not get everywhere we need to be. So that's basically where we're at. Just like you, struggling with budget priorities.
Budget thing. There's even the new, like, I know they built brand new ones in Timpview with some new developments. They're already cracked. I mean, tractors went over them. The construction, they're already completely smashed up.
So and I know that we have county roads versus city roads. What's the budget for roads? Just as a comparison, sidewalks versus roads.
I think we did some analysis recently in terms of not only operating costs but also capital cost. Right now, one of the statistics we look at is vehicle trips that are single occupant vehicles compared to all other transportation modes, whether that's carpool, walking, biking, scootering, whatever that might be. And right now, those single occupant vehicle trips, at least at commuting hours, are about 82-83% of all trips. Now that's and let me tell you, across Utah County, that's the smallest number. If you get to Eagle Mountain, it's 95% of all trips are single occupant vehicles. And I think last I understood, but when you combine both operating and capital, we're spending about 20% of our transportation dollars on non-road expenses. So whether that's bike lanes, sidewalks, multi-use paths in new development, new road development, trying to get to that complete street standard that we aspire to. And so I think we're spending a higher percentage of our budget on active transportation than the statistics would suggest we should do. Obviously, there's way bigger demand for those dollars than we have dollars to spend. So that's roughly a percentage.
So if you guys are doing budgeting now, or the mayor's doing budgeting now, who should we contact to make sidewalks a bigger priority? The mayor?
Yeah, although, again, we're pretty far along in the budget process, so again, it wouldn't hurt to let, again, you're communicating with the council, I think that's great. If you have specific sidewalks that you'd like us to take a look at, you can certainly reach out to engineering. We do keep a list of those that people call us about and try to prioritize those. So if you just wanted to let Rob Hunter, you can just call 311 and let him know and get on the list.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm just going to ask Sergeant Orgill, do you have any places at any of our schools that you would suggest that we need to increase safety for safe routes?
Everywhere. No, I don't think I have anything off the top of my head. We're actually doing pretty well as far as staffing with crossing guards. We do have a couple vacancies occasionally, but we've done much better this year about staffing. There's requests that are still coming in, and I would just mention real quickly too, just so everyone's aware of the process. The community council at each school makes those recommendations. So if you guys are having people coming to you and asking questions about a specific safe walking route, redirect them to their community council, and they can bring that to the district traffic safety committee, which is all of us that kind of make the decisions about where we're going to staff different crossings. Just streamlines the process. We have a process in place, so that would be helpful. As far as a specific place that I'm concerned about, I don't have anywhere specifically. I don't think we've had too many major issues this year. So.
And just to add to Sergeant Orgill's commentary, we are rapidly approaching the time for the annual meeting of that school safety committee. Usually happens end of April, first part of May, and that's when when the school district has gathered all the recommendations from community councils, and then we take a look at them. We bring school district staff, transportation staff, our department, UTA, UDOT, all sitting in the same room and talking about how to make all those things work. And so we do try to take a comprehensive look annually at any changes to safe routes to schools. But as John suggested, it starts with community councils and then finds its way through that evaluation process, and then our safe routes to school committee takes a look at that about this time every year.
And I just want to say thank you. The process has been streamlined since when I first came on the board over 5 years ago. It's come a long way, so I want to say thank you for what we've done and how far we've come. We still have more room to grow, but thank you for the hard work you have been putting in. Gina?
Also, yes, thank you. My neighborhood has talked about how awesome you guys are, so it's great. Thank you. One other thing I want us to be thinking about, we don't have to have a huge discussion about it, is we're going with the Shoreline Middle School moving, we're going to have the bulk of the students live on the other side of the tracks. So they're going to be crossing those tracks, and especially with the news of the kid, was it South Jordan, who was hit and killed by some public transportation. I don't know if it was the tracks or if it was the front runner. But I think we need to be, both the city as well as us, and I think we need, as far as the school district goes, we need to be talking about busing. Because right now, the kids who live on, would have to cross the tracks are all bused, and there's been talk about not busing the other direction. I think we need to keep that in mind. One loss of a student life is too many. And so I think we need to be thinking about that as we're talking about safe routes to school and how we're going to get our middle school students whose brains are not fully developed across those tracks safely.
Is there any other discussion about safe routes?
Just one quick question. Update on the crosswalk that has started to go, well, the crosswalk's in front of Provo Peaks. I think we're still waiting for flashing lights for that crosswalk.
Those were installed last week or the week before, so they're in now.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, well, thank you for your help in answering those questions for us today.
You're welcome.
So, next, we're going to have a discussion about how the city and the district can work together to support areas, neighborhoods, and schools.
I can start. The My Hometown Initiative had their first service project on Saturday, and the classes started today. And I think this program needs to coordinate better with the school district. I seriously doubt the rest of the board even knows what this is. The only reason I know is because this is my neighborhood and my ward, and so it's happening in me. Today I took Thomas to one of the first classes, and there were only 4 students at the what they called the pre-kindergarten class, and and then they told us that only 2 of the kids would actually be able to continue going to the class. But there was no coordination with the school district on any of these classes and what time the classes are going to be taking, and that is a really big problem. Why are these classes happening now while school is still in session? Why isn't it during summertime? So I don't know who needs to, I don't know who the contact person is with the church, but Wayne, is that you or is it Bill?
We can certainly connect you
Yeah,
with the right people.
tell them that they need to contact better with the school district because they're not communicating with us very well. I know they had a meeting this morning at Franklin Elementary School, but that was the very first meeting with the school. And the only reason I even knew about it was because I happened to be at a city council meeting when it was very first discussed back in February. So that's kind of poor planning in their part. This Thursday is a huge community event at Franklin Elementary School at 5:30 p.m. and that is supposed to be in coordination with the My Hometown Initiative, but I don't know how coordinated it actually is. But everybody's invited.
What day was that?
Thursday.
Thursday. So My Hometown folks will be there. We have a booth that we paid for, and we're bringing donated materials to the program. So this is again an effort to reach out to the community. We've done focus groups, we've done surveys, we've done a lot of interaction with these 2 little neighborhood areas that have been selected for the first pilot process in the My Hometown. This is very much ready, fire, aim process, and so we're learning as we go, and I totally acknowledge some of the things that Terry's talked about. Communication and coordination hasn't been much, but this is the first effort at trying to do it, and again, we're learning our way through the process with hundreds of volunteers and about a dozen church service missionary couples that have been provided by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in very small targeted neighborhoods. These are a few blocks, square blocks, in an effort to try to see how it works, see what the needs are, try to figure out where we go from here, and then if we follow the pattern that we've watched occur in West Valley, and we're doing this, Ogden's about the same stage we're at with this, and we're coordinating, but there have been really positive, massive neighborhood development sorts of activities that have really made a difference in those communities that have done it. So again, it's very early in the game, but again, we'd be happy to come and present at a school board work meeting if you'd like, and fill you in on the process, bring some of our volunteers so you can meet them and see what's happening. So.
Wayne, I was unaware that My Hometown initiative was public education oriented.
So yeah, let me talk briefly about that. And it's not particularly public education focused, but basically the concept behind My Hometown is to identify a neighborhood that has a high level of need, and that's ascertained by a lot of different metrics. And then the city brings the church in along with other faith groups or other volunteer groups, and tries to coordinate essentially a neighborhood capacity building project. And so one of the things that's come out of some of the research that's been done, some of the surveying and focus groups, is a need to do some very targeted education, not so much again, Terry talked about pre-K, and there is some of that. That kind of was shared by the neighborhood as being a really important need. But it's also things like, from an education perspective, it's things like music lessons. If there's a need to teach piano or teach violin, they'll call a church service missionary who's got a master's degree in music and taught at BYU for years, who will come in and lead a class. Or if it's financial literacy, they'll bring in experts in that. If it's auto repair, they'll create a class around that. So again, it's very targeted, very specific, intended to be very small. These are groups of 5 or 6 or 10 people who are involved, but it's really trying to focus on the needs identified through the research, through the use of the block captains that are, that represent 10 or 12 different, different residences who are championing their cause, and then to marshal all those resources to make it happen. So again, it's a very small microcosm right now, but I think there's enormous potential for what this can do in terms of building capacity in the neighborhood, making them aware of resources. And it's not as we describe, it's not a swoop ins, say, gosh, your house is a mess, let's clean it up kind of thing, but it's to go in and say, you have a wonderful neighborhood here, what things do you need to help make it better? And then to bring the resources to bear from the community or other places to try to help. So that's a nutshell of what I would tell you in half an hour if you brought me to a work meeting.
Because we're short on time, I'm going to move this forward. If there's certain ways that you want to talk to the counselors about, or vice versa, please send them our way to how we can work together on future in our neighborhoods and such. We're going to bring up a part about regarding tennis courts. We have been approached by many people in the area wanting us to put tennis courts in at the new Shoreline middle school. One of the biggest problems that we have with that is that our middle schools do not have organized sports. So it's hard for us to spend taxpayer dollars on non-educational facilities. But we are seeing that there's a real need. So we're bringing this back to you as a council to see if there's something you could do with more tennis courts in an area, in any of our parks.
Melanie, I'd like to also add, hearing from the principal at Dixon, he said, because there's currently some on the Dixon property, that it is a management issue, because during the school day, they're not supposed to have anybody on them other than if they were to have a PE class or something, and they're constantly out there telling neighborhood people in the community, you can't be here during the school day. And so it's not just an asset for children who are school age, but it's a community asset that the community wants for community purposes. And so I think it would be great if we could find a solution that children could use after school in our community, and that adults during the day would be able to have access to tennis courts as well.
We have Scott Henderson here with us for Parks and Rec, and Bob is in that regard.
Well, maybe just to give our leadership an idea of the numbers we have for tennis courts. So currently there are 14 tennis courts in Provo that are operated by Provo City. And there are currently 20 tennis courts in Provo operated by the school district. So the level of standard from the National Recreation and Parks Association, and we just did our master plan in 2021, is 1 court for every 8,500. So if you take our 14 courts times the scope that they have, that brings us right at 119,000 for a population of Provo. So, and the school district is very generous in that, and taking care of their neighborhood in Timpview, and I know we have use there, and also in the Dixon School we have use on those tennis courts too, and probably sometimes at inappropriate times during the school day. But so that adds to that mix too. So from a level of service standpoint, we're right where we're at. Our master plan does talk about 6 additional courts before 2030. So we can look at strategic locations like that going towards and look at those neighborhoods, and probably on the west side would be one of those neighborhoods where it would be appropriate, so we can look at that together. We try to localize our courts and going to the different neighborhoods, and it seems like the interest, and the school district builds larger tennis complexes like at Provo High and at Timpview, whereas we build more 2-court and 4-court complexes. And I think the Provo High coach, which I know has brought this up also with us too, he talks about the middle school program to us, and quite frankly, we thought all these years that was a school program, and we found out now lately that it's more of a business venture. So we have to adjust what we're doing there, because it was portrayed as part of our, which is I think a state-of-the-art cooperative use agreement that Parks and Recreation has with the school district about making sure our student athletes are playing, and then also some of our programs are able to happen in school district. So it's a great thing. But so we build for our citizens, but we may not build for competitive programming like the school district would do. But that's an update of where we're at with tennis courts. I deal with a lot of people that love their sports and love their interests, and be it either tennis players or pickleball players or mountain bikers and all those, every sport, thinks they need more. But we had just gone through the master plan process, so we did have an idea of where we are within the standard in Provo. But a Parks and Rec director will never turn down an opportunity to add more facilities.
I asked the neighborhood chairs around Shoreline what they would want, and they asked their neighbors, and they said they want tennis/pickleball courts. So if that's possible, make the two available.
We have that model that we did in Rotary Park up in the Grandview area, which seemed to work really, really well, and it's an anthill there. It's busy all the time.
Yeah, we could build 100 pickleball courts tomorrow and still not come anywhere close to meeting demand.
I was just going to ask, the new complex that's being built on the west side, I know there's pickleball going in. Are there any tennis courts going in there as well?
There's no tennis courts in that complex. It's built as a regional sports park, so that right now we have 330 teams of our Provo kids playing on 11 soccer fields right now. So the regional sports park will cover that interest for those flat fields. And then the pickleball side of that, we were approached through our Provo Foundation and a fundraising effort. So the pickleball complex, if they raise the money, the city has donated the design and the land to the project, and we're hoping they're successful in raising the money for the complex. So we're hoping that partnership works out. But they're talking about 45 pickleball courts on that one location.
And can they be made the hybrid court like up at Rotary?
The pickleball athletes don't look at the hybrid courts as respecting their sport. They don't like the ghost lines on the tennis courts and calling those pickleball courts. So these ones it's a pickleball court regional effort, and they're much smaller, so it doesn't have that dual use purpose that we've seen in some other areas too.
And even at Rotary, they're not overlapping courts.
No, the tennis courts are for tennis at Rotary, and the pickleball for pickleball. Because if you're playing one game to a pickleball, then that takes a tennis court out of the mix. So that can cause those the conflicts of use a little bit more on site.
The tennis players would say that pickleball is not a sport, it is a game.
So, and it's always fun getting these two groups in the same room.
Mountain biking, road biking.
Yeah. Very true.
Well, we just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's probably not going to happen at Shoreline. We haven't made a final decision, but it's hard to spend educational dollars on something that's not for education.
Would we say, like as a board, our general feeling is if the city wants to build it, we'd be cool with that? Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. Is that our general position?
Yeah, or I mean, if there's a way that we could work together as well.
So we have the
We
land.
we have land,
But we don't have the desire.
but we don't have, we don't want to spend the X amount of dollars that we could put into education otherwise.
Well, if I heard Mr. Henderson correctly, I mean, it sounds like it's a possibility, but it's not. It's probably not a possibility or a desirability in the near future. But maybe it's something that we could look at, you know, after the school goes in, and I don't know if that becomes a issue of cost effectiveness to build something later, but.
We're also positioned quite well around the new school with both an athletic facility and some land for a possible development of a neighborhood park there too, which might be able to provide and every single neighborhood designs their park. And so that's where so if there is an interest for tennis or pickleball or whatever there is in that area, when we start developing that down the road, then, you know, I think those interests will come out, and they always make it in the park design.
Okay.
Do you have a location for where that park will go?
So we have the footprinters, softball field right there. So it would just be further to the north of that. There's kind of the pond, and I might be off on my north, south, east, west over there.
Right there.
Right,
Okay.
right adjacent to that.
Well, thank you. We'll continue this conversation maybe, but I'm happy to hear that you are aware of the problems that we're also facing too, but that we're also adding 6 by 2030. So,
right.
Yeah. So, okay. A discussion regarding truth in taxation. I'm going to turn the time over to Derek Anderson about this.
This year we will be going through our truth in taxation as our every other year. As you are aware of the 2 new construction projects that we just entered into, the total cost of the bonds that we issued were $111 million, and so we will be going in through truth in taxation to have to cover those bond payments. On a average home, I don't know the average home value yet here in the city, but let's say the average home value is $500,000. That's going to be about $200 on a $500,000 home. So to cover those bonds, so that's one of those things that we will be doing this year to cover that. And then also any other raises or things that we need to do in terms of just trying to keep up with the market demand.
A $200 increase?
Correct, on an average home value. And that's rough estimate off of my mental calculation, so.
And my view is that it already comes down, and so I don't know if it's going to be a $200 impact on its own, but obviously the way our tax rates fluctuate.
Correct. So
there's some modification there.
So you're correct. The rates, the values will fall. I'm guessing we're going to probably see about a $8 billion valuation is what I would guess that they're going to assess the city at in terms of valuation. So that will drop the tax rates. I wanted to say it was like a triple O 6 or something like that off the top of my head, but those rates will come down. But in terms of everything holding equal, it's about $200 for those bonds.
Yeah, so we just wanted the council to be aware of it, because I know in the past that we've tried to make you aware so that maybe if we did it one year, you would do it the other year, but go from that.
How often do you all do truth in taxation?
We've had an informal agreement with the city that we would do every other year. So a lot of the school districts, obviously new elected officials never like to say this is the only language of truth in taxation. Is even if you decrease the rate, often the language is I'm increasing your taxes because it would have fallen otherwise. So with that, they don't like to do it, and with the regular churn of new elected officials, they're not going to say I won't raise your taxes. There's some interruption of that. The more stable place is, several years where the school district did not. We released that spring. That was not really helpful. So we thought, oh, you know, we want to go more regularly, and there was sort of an informal agreement with the city council that, hey, we won't do it every year, because there was one year where, you know, our regular pressure or teacher salaries, yours is public safety. And what do you say, you know, what do you spend, how many officers do you hire, when do you do that, what do you pay them, and firefighters. And so we said, well, just so you know, we'll probably look at that every other year, with the goal of sort of capturing inflation. And the city council hasn't actually, you know, they haven't done necessarily every other year. And we've sort of stayed on our schedule, and we'll probably continue to do that. I think the only way we would do it is it's really hard to keep teachers right now. Majority of our teachers are actively looking for other careers. And so, you know, there might be a couple years coming up that it will be every year just to try and find a way, because we have to be able to, with the job market as it is, we have to be able to maintain our talent. Our talent has a direct connection to our community's future, and so that's some of the things that we're looking at.
Can I just expound on that? I was going to mention that as well. I think that's a big portion of why we want to do the truth in taxation, is to address our teacher salaries, not only with inflation, but we have been well behind our surrounding districts, most of the districts on the Wasatch Front, in terms of teacher salaries. A couple of years ago, we made significant progress on that, but we are still behind, and we have not decided yet as a board, so we can't say exactly what the increase is going to be yet, but we are going to figure out exactly what we want that to look like, and we'll have that determined by June, and then we do the truth in taxation in August.
Can you give us some numbers? What right now is your average entrance level teacher salary? What's your average teacher salary? What is your shortfall on number of teachers you need?
Maybe median, not average, would be helpful.
So the starting salary of our teachers for a bachelor's is $44,500. Okay, and that's just starting. And if you look at the districts around us, you'll think, yeah, it's a couple $1,000s off. That's not a huge deal. The problem is we have to take into effect career earnings also, and when we do the analysis on not just our teachers but our employees across the board, our lifetime career earnings for our employees are significantly behind the neighboring districts and the other ones that we compare to.
I think it was $450,000 amount career over a career.
Correct. $450,000 for a career
So
over
differential
a career.
is what, retirement pay?
Sorry, what was that?
Is the differential largely retirement pay, or is it
No,
salary?
so they're the same part of the same retirement system, but what happens is that just based off of the salary schedule structure and the way that their salary schedule is and their starting pay is and things like that, over their career at Alpine, they'll make about $400,000 more
over how many years?
A 35-year career.
What's your average or median salary?
So a median is going to be somewhere, and I haven't gone and pulled the actual numbers, so please, my guess is it's going to be around 65. So, and that's kind of right at that midpoint.
What's your deficit right now? How many teachers are you short?
So we're not short any right now.
Okay.
Our teacher positions are filled. The positions that we're hurting the most are our ESP staff, the ones that the support services, transportation, teacher aides, child nutrition, custodial services. Those are the positions that we're just dying for. And unfortunately, those are like, you know, if the teacher aide where teacher is teaching her class, um, but their aide is gone. That's they're normally used to. That adds a significant load. So unfortunately, we're down quite a bit of aides right now too. So those are that lower part of our salary schedule. Those positions are the ones that we've been hit the hardest on, and it's because they're not necessarily going to go and leave to go to Nebo or Alpine. They can leave somewhere right here close and go make $2 to $3 more per hour, just at something else.
And I was just going to add that our pool of applicants for teachers is shrinking every year too.
That's correct. So I mean, right now we're not short, but that's because we are trying to correct our, and I shouldn't say correct, we're trying to get back to our student-teacher ratios pre-COVID. And so sorry, what was that?
What's your current ratio?
Our current ratio right now is 23.6 to 1, and we're trying to get back to an average of 28 across the district, 27 and a half at the elementary, 28 in the middle, and 28 and a half at the high school. So we're trying to move back to that, and we're handling it through attrition. And so as people leave and get to that point, then we'll be back to the target ratios that we want to be. But right now we're not looking. I know there are other districts that do have that problem because they're already at their ratios. So.
And is your pool shrinking because teaching is viewed now as a less attractive profession?
Correct. That's correct.
So in the pipeline, in the education schools at BYU, they're down more than 50%. The University of Utah, more than 50% of people who major in education.
Wow.
This is just not something that is attractive. So to add a little more color to us, our district leads the state in mobility, meaning that our teachers stay with us the least amount of time. We can attract teachers because of our location. We're wonderfully positioned down at the bottom of the hill of one university, at the bottom of the hill of another university that produces these teachers. We're attractive for, immediately out of college, but then that next step, that next job, or that longevity piece, we do not compete. Where that shows up, I have a great, if you'll let me violate some FERPA laws here, with my two daughters, I have a great example. I have twin daughters. One played in the band, and her schedule for band dictated a certain, math classes that she took. She had experienced math classes from 7th grade on. The other twin, same household, same parents, same level of support. Took choir, had different math classes, had a first-year math teacher from 7th grade every year till she graduated. There's a significant difference in that college applications math score. That longevity is what we're trying to.
All I heard is band is better than choir.
But that longevity really makes a difference for our students. That's something that we're trying to look at. How do we again keep that? And that involves a lot of things different from us. The change in the state retirement system, from defined benefits to
the supply and demand dynamic has
contributions.
changed.
What that means. We used to be able to really compete in retirement benefits and other things, and there's been some changes in the state system and save some money. There's some short-term thinking in the public that has gone into that, but that's where we're trying to compete is longevity, and where we want to make some additional improvements.
Is 90% of the problem financial?
No.
It's part of it, but
There's a lot. We do have that same pool that comes from those colleges. I mean, some of it is just then their spouse gets a job somewhere else and they move, and that's out of our control, right? They move out of state or whatever. I'd also add this year we've heard from teachers, administrators, many who have been working for many years in education have said this has been the hardest year ever
includes the 2 years previous with COVID challenges. And I think some of it is their desire to really help these kids catch up from some of the learning loss that happened during that COVID time. The political climate has made it very difficult on teachers, that they're not feeling the respect for their own profession, and I could see how that would make it hard for people to want to get into the profession.
Expectations are just different. There's a pandemic lag where kids weren't in school. We ask our professionals on a short-term mentality to go make every effort to reach out individually and personalize. Now that individualization and personalization is the expectation of our community. I don't have to go to school. Our family can go on a 2-month vacation. My teacher is responsible to make sure that this all works out. You will not, if my kid is not doing well, it is your fault. Because you've accommodated us through this, now always accommodate us in all these that have great in-classroom discussions, have everything online. Our teachers are, we cannot do this. This is not sustainable. And you know, a good thing was that a lot of people were convinced 10 years ago that computers were going to replace teachers. Nobody believes that anymore. But even with teaching with technology, it turns out we're going to have the same number of humans involved. That we're going to create other efficiencies to be able to offer different things, but in the core functions, we're going to sort of have the same number of humans involved in education to want the same result that we've always had.
And so we definitely have, going back, a supply and demand problem. So, like, I came from the private sector where I worked at a company called Deloitte and Touche, and in the private sector, this is not uncommon, where you start and in 5 years you'll double your salary, right? So started at Deloitte at 42. At year 5, I was at 88, and you see that very often, very similar across industries of professional degrees where they ratchet up fairly quickly with their experience. For a teacher to double their salary, it will take them 30 years. Okay, that's just the dynamic of the funding situation. We don't have the funding to be able to ratchet our employees' pay up like the market on the outside. The other issue that we're dealing with is even school districts across the nation. So like I was at another district, and we had to go hire from other states, bring them back, and they would stay for on average about 3 to 4 years, because they would get some experience and then go back to the state, which paid better, had a bigger retirement package, things like that. And so really we have a supply and demand problem. McKay nailed it on the head. And the number of teachers or people graduating education has dropped significantly, and you can get the reports from all the colleges. I actually used to do that at Jordan, and call up the colleges to figure out that statistic. So we have less people coming into the field here currently in the state. We have to recruit outside. They go back. People even that graduate here want to leave the career because of the pressures and things. We've seen, unfortunately, there's been a loss of civility, and where a lot of people will really promote the secondary education. Oh, college is great, go to college, get a college degree, yada, yada, yada. But then they really drag them through the mud, the process to get there, which is the K-12 education system. And so really, the support in making the teachers feel valued from parents for what they do, getting back to the point where it's an attractive career. Until that happens, there will constantly be pressure for more money, because there just won't be enough supply and demand.
One thing that I think is helpful for you to understand also is the dynamics of our system. So I'm sure at the end of the legislative session, you've heard the legislative leaders like 10% increase or 9% increase in state state's spending on education. Our teachers hear that well as well, so they expect, or they'll say a 6% on the WPU. They'll expect 6% of the WPU or a 9%, COLA. But the state only provides half of their salary. The rest is, so if you want to see truth in taxation pressure coming, when you hear the governor or the legislature celebrating 9%, know that our teachers are expecting that, but we're going to have to come up with 4.5% of that with new money, because they're only talking about half the cost. So.
Another question. I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but I'm just curious. We see a lot on the nightly news about a lot of anger, dissension, and between school boards and parents and curriculum and whatever. I don't sense that here so much. How much of that has crept into your lives?
Not as much as you may see in other places. I know, like, we had, I think, I believe Granite School District that really had a pretty, kind of hairy meeting a few months ago. We haven't seen that as much here in the coast. We've been lucky in that regard. And we're grateful for that. But to everyone's point,
There's a lot of pressure all around, and there's so much divisiveness. I mean, unless things change or somehow become better, we're gonna see it at some point if things don't change, really. So.
Going to see it. What is?
We could easily have a meeting, a school board meeting like Granite's in our near future if we don't start, if the political climate, if lots of different things don't start turning into more positive environment for teachers, for students, for everyone. So.
We're doing well. Are those pressures in our district? Yes. Do we get those emails? Yes. Have we had, some people that have had some questions? Yes. It does make us nervous, and we do. We're proud of our community. We're proud of our schools. We think we work really hard at making our schools representative of our community, and that is, some people don't think that that's ideal, but that's what we should do, and that means that the good parts of our community are there, and that there is dissension in our community. That means that there's dissension around our schools. So.
Well, that's why we pay you folks the big bucks, right?
Can I add one quick thing?
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing. And I don't mean to focus on the negative, but I do want to add one more thing that our teachers are really dealing with as far as the pressure goes on them, which is a perception and a problem, and also, when I say a perception problem, that incoming teachers understand that this is a problem these days. But in our schools, we are no longer teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. We are having to teach the whole child, meaning we are taking care of mental health for children. We're taking care of meals for children. We're taking care of gaps where parents aren't able to fill in. And when I say the whole child, I mean the entire child is what we have become responsible for as a school district. And this is not just us. This is nationwide. Every school district is having to take a whole child approach. We've doubled the amount of social workers we have in our schools in the last little while because it is an incredibly big need. And when they say that this is the hardest year, a lot of that is COVID-induced, COVID lag, but a lot of that is coming from the mental state of our teachers and our students. And so that's another big, huge pressure that's on teachers, and one of the reasons why people are not entering the profession is because I do not get to come and just teach lessons anymore. I have to come and I have to be a parent, I have to be a social worker, I have to be, I have to fill 7 or 8 different roles besides my responsibilities as a teacher. And that is a lot of pressure. And to be paid $40,000 to start and not be able to double your salary for 30 years and have that amount of responsibility on you as a teacher is frankly not attractive to people. So I just wanted to add that because I also teach as well, and it's very clear. I teach privately, but even in where people who can afford to come to my school, I see it even there. It's just how, it's the
everything gets weaponized. So we can have 5 years of talking about, let's break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. Let's teach people they can do better than their parents. And then people will find that language in our curriculum and say, why isn't my household good enough for you? You have no right to say my house is bad. Do not change my household. Stay out of it. Just teach. You're like, wait a minute. You wanted us to break the chain of intergenerational poverty, to change some of the patterns. And that's hard. We're not, but they believe we'll be really successful in changing other patterns in people's households. So,
Are you getting pushback on like social emotional learning? And even though those are exactly the tools you need to be doing to, okay, yeah. That's a great situation to be in.
Yep. So, well, I am gonna, we've run over, and I appreciate those of you that have been able to stay and the board, and I really appreciate that we were able to have this meeting in person, and I look forward to our next one, which will probably be in 6 months. So I appreciate this, and is there a motion to, I guess we don't need a motion to adjourn. We'll just adjourn.
Reach the end of our agenda.
Yep, yep, thank you.